Hey, good morning, friends. Just wanted to take a few moments to connect with you and recap these past 2 weeks that we've been in the book of Psalms. This series called Psalms of Summer exists for us as a bit of an intermission between two really important parts of the book of Romans. Book of Romans, the series we've been in, the vision of God, tells us so much about God's plans for salvation, our great need because of our wickedness and sin, but ultimately the kindness and faithfulness of a God who is relentless in his pursuit of his creation and spared not his own son to come and die for us. And so why the Psalms? What's the point of the Psalms? Well, last week we brought a message titled "Listening for the Future." And Psalm 1 is all it is for us, first and foremost, like a presentation or a preview of the Psalms, kind of a prelude to help us navigate, and kind of prepare us for what it is that we should expect from the Psalms. And Psalm 1 and 2 exist together kind of like as a unit, begins with blessing or blessed life and then ends with, the blessed life. And so blessed are those who walk not in the counsel of the wicked, or stand in the way of sinners, or sit in the seat of the scornful. I'm squirming because it's super windy right now, and I don't want the sound to get muffled. But their delight is in the law of the Lord, and on it they meditate day and night. They shall be like trees planted along streams, who bears fruit in season, whose leaves do not wither, and all they do prospers. And so I wanted to just kind of like take that part of it, and then talk briefly about what happens to the wicked and how the chaff, how they're scattered like chaff. Pretty strong language. But what we did was we looked at the first part of this, and we see that there's a progression of walking, of standing, and of sitting. And this is the progression of every choice we make in life, really, is that we're all considering making decisions that we're ultimately going to lead to a new kind of lifestyle. And some of them we make inadvertently, some of them we willfully and intentionally go after. But number one, what we see here is that we're walking. We're walking down Wicked Street, and the illustration that I gave is like you're tuning into a radio. You're listening to the radio kind of in the background, and you hear a song. Maybe it's the beat, maybe it's the melody, but there's something about it. Just something kind of hits, and you begin to turn it up, and so it catches your ear, and you begin listening, and so you tune in. And you turn in, and so maybe on Wicked Street, we'll call this the marketplace. There's sinners set up with their table of wares, and they're giving you, samples. And they're showing you, a future that you could have if you wanted. And so you pick it up, you taste it, and you're like, yeah, I think I could, I can get on with this. And so then you walk off with that thing. And you like it so much, you begin to champion it. And so you go from standing in the way of sinners there in the marketplace, the table of sinful goods, and then you now walk off with it, and you justify your purchase. You become an advocate and a champion for your decision, and that ultimately becomes a lifestyle, becomes something that you're giving voice to, that you have to defend and so forth, and gladly, because it's giving you joy. But the caution here is that there is a future that is very unstable, very volatile, when it in regards to wickedness, in regards to sin, what the Bible would call sin, and those that you keep company with, those who are around you. And so the audio example that we gave in listening for your future is, number one, you're hearing it, but now you're tuning in and you're listening to it. And then thirdly, and this is where you become an advocate, you're looping it. And people who loop it, the lyrics, the beat, the timing. And so it's something that's just kind of locked in. And I don't know about you, but I've got earworms. They call them earworms, like songs that you'll hear from like decades ago. Like there are things that were hitting, and like got into your psyche somehow, and you haven't shaken it yet. And so maybe something recently that you're like, I can't get that song out of my head. And so that's kind of the idea behind that, because the playlists that we loop become the lives that we lead, or the paths that we take. Our playlists become our paths, and the things we loop become the lives that we lead. And so think about what you're looping. Are you looping half-truths about, about your relationship with God, your relationship with your spouse, your children? Are you giving into gray areas of compromise? And, are you lingering on websites longer than you should, or like maybe Instagram, reels or things like that you're like, man, nobody's here. I'm gonna go ahead and lean into this, turn it up, and before long you begin justifying that behavior. You may initially feel kind of like disgusted by yourself, but you gotta be careful, because the things that you loop, the things you return to, you're gonna have to defend. And you want what you're defending to be something that God's defending, something that it's on the side of God. So it leads us to our next part, and that's delighting in the law of God, delighting in God's ways. Because at the end of the day, you want to be aligned with God's plans. If He's the king, you want to be aligned with His kingdom. And so what is it that we delight in when we delight in the law of God? Well, number one is that we delight in the fact that He's given us some things that we can abide by that prevent unforced errors in our life. These things come to us in a list of do's and don'ts, mostly just don'ts. Thou shalt not, but also thou shalt remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. Thou shalt honor thy father and mother. And there are others in there that are in the like these are commandments, things that God is telling us, hey, this is going to lead to the blessed life that most reflects my intentions for your life, but ultimately my character and what it looks like to walk with God in holiness. And coming back to the Psalms, as we're delighting in the law of God, there comes a fruitfulness from our life, but that comes from rootedness. And the rootedness comes from the intentional decision that we make to uproot ourselves from unfruitful environments and to plant ourselves in fruitful environments. And there's no more fruitful environment than to be planted by a stream where the water is right there, where you can easily pull from it the nourishment, the nutrients needed to be strong, to produce good fruit, and to have leaves that don't wither. And so that kind of life, roots come from rhythms. Roots come from rhythms, and the kind of rhythms that produce rootedness are the showing up in God's house with God's people. If there is any place here on earth where we could say, hey, this is a stream, an easy place. I'm going to say easy, but hey, if you're wondering, how do I begin to pursue the will of God for my life and the call of God on my life? Well, you need to be where the people of God are. You can't claim to be a Christian and not like His people, not want to be around His people. That's insane. And it's inconsistent with Scripture. So you need to find a local church. Heartland Church Ovid is a great church. It's not a perfect church, but man, we have people who love each other well, serve each other well, and who are living in hope, looking for Christ to show up in their lives and show up in the lives of each other and in our world. And so that's really the picture of the blessed life, is somebody who's anticipating that. But in the Psalms specifically, Psalm 1 and 2, you've got to remember, these are the songs of Jesus. These are the songs that Jesus would have been singing, would have been anticipating. But these are the songs that He's that are revealing who He is. More than anybody who's ever lived, Jesus resonated with these Psalms. And so Psalm 1, He's hearing this, and he's saying, yes, I delight in the law of God. I delight in the law of God because I delight in the God who gives the law. I know Him. He's my Father, and He loves me. And so there are no doubt ways that you and I can look at the Psalms and feel incredible deficiencies and think, man, I don't know how I can measure up to this. That's why it's so important that we look to Jesus through the Psalms, because the Psalms are looking for Jesus themselves. And we find their fulfillment in Him uniquely, which is why Psalm 2 exists, because Psalm 2, it goes from identifying both the blessed man, the blessed life, and the wicked man and the wicked life, And those who sit in the council of the wicked ultimately form governments, form nations, form, and their ideologies, can create disaster on earth. But the godly and the righteous align with the sovereign one, the anointed one, who was and is and ever will reign forevermore. He laughs at the plans of men, when they try to do things on their own. And that's just the language that we're given. He laughs, and and the reality is that he at some point will dash them with a rod of like irreparable correction. But I love how the psalm ends, because it says, "Listen, you kings, be wise, you rulers." He invites them into a peace, into a treaty. Kiss the Son, lest you perish. And so we want to recognize God is king, but more importantly, he has installed his king over the earth. The resurrection proves of Jesus' unique divinity and his power over sin, his power over death, and that all who put their hope and faith in him to become like him and receive him into their hearts and allow by the Spirit to become new people and partner with the plans of God, that they take refuge in God. Blessed are all who take refuge in him. And so that's how we live above the noise. And so that was our message this past Sunday, living above the noise. It's a noisy world. We got to tune our hearts to heaven, got to hear the voice of not just our Savior, but of our King. What's he doing? What brings about his right rule and reign? What brings about justice and mercy and compassion and righteousness in this world? We want to tune our hearts to those things. We want to live above the noise. We want to listen for the future. And that's why we're in the Psalm. So hopefully this is encouraging to you. And maybe we'll be back here next week for the next Psalm, the next recap. God bless you. Have an awesome week. We'll see you soon.